What's up everybody, welcome back. Today I want to upgrade the project to Unreal Engine 5.1. So it is pretty late maybe, 5.2 preview is already released. But I want to make sure that we have the new enhanced input system set up before 5.2 releases. And who knows, they might get rid of the old system entirely. So just to avoid things like that, we're going to upgrade to the enhanced input system. So first of all, we need to upgrade the entire project to 5.1. So if you already have it open, let's close it down and let's make sure that you have the folder up in your Explorer. So let's close the project. And then you want to go to the root folder where the U project file is, and you want to right click it. And if you're in Windows 11, then you need to go to more options. And then under the options, you will see switch Unreal Engine versions. So if you click that, you can simply select 5.1 from the drop-down menu and click OK. So this will change the U project file, and now we can relaunch the project. So it is actually launching on my other monitor. So just be patient. There we go. So you might have to recompile shaders if you do that. So it might take a little bit longer for you. But for me, it's already up. And I get a message on my other monitor saying we have to set up the new shaders in the project settings. So that's the first thing that we're going to do. We're going to go to Edit Project Settings. And then you want to scroll on the left side all the way down to Platforms and select Windows. And over here, you need to enable the SM6 shader under the Direct 3D 12. So just enable the little tick box over here, and you will see we need to restart the engine. So let's restart it. And again, it's opening on my other monitor. There we have it. So that's good to go. No warnings anymore when we load the project. Now, to make sure that we can actually package the project and everything is working, we need to set up something in the project settings. So let's do that first. We're going to go to Edit Project Settings. And then you want to go to Packaging. And under Packaging, expand the little Advanced section over here. And then if you scroll down over here, you will see the list of maps to include in a packaged build. And over here in 5.1, we need to specify the maps that we want to include when we're building the game. So if you don't set them up over here, the game will not work if you build it. So simply add all of the maps. So I think we have 5 in here. I may be mistaken, but let's start with 5. And we can simply browse through them. So make sure you're in the correct project folder and then go to content, and we have them under the maps folder. So I'm using the MP map 03, and then I'm also using MP map 01. So the maps 02 and 01 are old ones. I still have them in the project, but I'm not using them. But make sure every map that you have in the game, you add them in this list. So we also need to add our lobby menu. And then we're going to go to our main menu. And you also want to make sure you include the travel map. So that should be in the menu folder, or maybe you placed it in the maps folder, but make sure you include the travel map for seamless travel as well. So then we have 5 maps in this list over here, and that should be good to go. So now that we have all of that stuff out of the way, we can start setting up the new inputs. So let's start by creating a new folder for it. So I'm just going to create a new folder and call this input. And in here, I'm going to create a new folder and call this actions. So let's right click, and then we're going to go to input. That's the new category over here. And then you want to select an input action. So I'm going to call this IA from input action and then underscore move. So if we open this up, we want to make sure that we set the value type over here to an axis 2D, and that's a vector 2D. So then we can use that for things like movement and looking around. So that's the input action move, and we can duplicate it and call this input action look. And then we want to create a third one, so let's duplicate it again and call this input action jump. And for this one, we want to open it up again. And this time we want to set the value type back to a digital bool, and that simply means it's a button you can press. So you can use it for an action instead of looking around and things like that. So now that we have these three, we need to add a whole bunch more of actions. So if we go to our project settings and simply go to the alt inputs, then we have a list over here, and we need to create an input action for all of the action mappings that we have over here. So let's just duplicate the jump one, because all of these ones need to be digital bools. So we can simply duplicate this one and then work our way down the list. So we have ADS, fire, weapon, and pause game. So input action ADS. And then we have fire, weapon, and pause game. And then reload, dash, and switch weapon. Dashing and switch weapon. Then we got interact, toggle scoreboard, and switch shoulder. So let's create 3 more. Interact, toggle scoreboard, and switch shoulder. So let's make sure that we have the correct prefix over here. Input action, there we go. Switch shoulder, and then we have jump. We already did jumping, so then we need crouch, melee, and throw grenade. Input action crouch, input action melee, and input action throw grenade. And the last one is toggle inventory. So let's create one more, and that's input action toggle inventory. So this one only applies if you're also following the inventory tutorial. And then the axis mappings, we already did movement and looking, so we don't need to worry about those. So let's get rid of the project files over here. We can save all of our input actions. Then let's go back to the input folder, and we're going to right click, go to input again, and this time we're going to create an input mapping context. So let's call this something like IMC input. And let's open it up. So in here, we want to set up all the action mappings and the actual keys we need to press to make them happen. So first of all, let's start with movement and looking, because those are the most difficult ones. So you want to click the little plus sign, then you can expand it over here, and you can select an input action. So let's start with movement. Input action move. So we can set which keys we want to use for these. So first of all, let's add 4 keys, and we want to start with W. And then we have S. And then A and D. There we go. So for these, we need to set up a few things. So let's expand the W, and we want to add a modifier. So let's click the plus sign for the modifier. And we want to add a swizzle input axis values. So you can simply add that, and this will make sure you can use it as an input with axis values. So you can expand it over here, but we don't need to change this. So this is set to Y, X, Z, and that's good for the order. So we have W done, and we can move to S. So let's expand that one. We want to add 2 modifiers over here. So again, we're going to add the swizzle input axis values. And then for the second modifier, you want to add negate. And that simply means it swaps them around. So it inverts the axis. So that's for the S key. And then for A and D, we also need to add modifiers. So let's expand A first, and we want to add one modifier to A, and that's only our negate one. And for D, we don't need to add a modifier, by the way, so D is good to go. Then if you also want to use the gamepad, you want to add another input, so you can click the plus sign again over here, and then you want to add the gamepad left thumbstick. So let's look for the left thumbstick. And from here, select the 2D axis, so left thumbstick 2D axis. And for this one, you want to add two modifiers. So let's add two of them. The first one is the dead zone, and the default settings for those are fine. And the second one you want to add is a scalar. And for that one, you want to set it to 50, 50, and then 1. So we're going to expand the scalar over here and simply set 50, 50, and leave this one to 1. So by the way, these are simply settings I got from the third-person project, so you can play around with the sensitivity if you increase or decrease these settings. So that's the left thumbstick, and that's the movement setup. So let's do our looking next. So we're gonna add another input over here. So from the mappings, click the little plus sign, so we get another input action. And then we want to select our input action look. And for this one, we want to set up our mouse. So for the first one, let's look for our mouse and then the XY 2D axis. So mouse XY and then 2D axis. And over here, we need one modifier, and that's the negate one. So we're going to add one modifier, select negate. And this time we want to expand it and only negate the Y-axis. So disable the X and the Z. Make sure you only have Y enabled. And then if you want to set up your gamepad again, you want to add the thumbstick right axis over here. So under the input action look, you can add another input. And this time look for the right thumbstick. And again, we're going to use the 2D axis. And for this one, we need the dead zone modifier. So let's add one modifier and select dead zone. So those are the most extensive ones, the movement and the looking. So those are good to go. And now all we need to do is set up our digital bool ones. So that's pretty simple. We can just add the mapping. So let's work our way down the list. So that's ADS, and then under here you can simply specify what key you want to use. So in this case I'm going to select the right mouse button. And if you want to use multiple buttons, you can simply click the plus sign over here and add them under the same input action. So let's do the next one. We have ADS, then we're going to do crouch. So I'm going to use the control key. And simply work our way down the list. So dashing, I'm going to use my left alt. And the next one is fire weapon, so that's going to be our left mouse. And then we have interact, so that's my F key on the keyboard. So you can set up the controller inputs over here as well. You can use the face buttons if you want to. And after interact, we have jumping. So that's going to be the spacebar. And let's see. Jumping, then we have looking. We already did that. So then we have melee. That's my middle mouse. And after melee, over here. So movement, we already did that. Then pause game. So I'm not going to set the escape key because that doesn't work in the editor. So I'm going to use the P key on my keyboard. Pause. And then we have a few more to go. So pause game, reload. So that's going to be the R key. And then we have switch shoulder. So I'm going to use Q. and switch weapons. So let's make that the E key. There we go. And we're almost there. So throw grenade, that's the G on my keyboard. Toggle inventory. So let's use the T key for that one. And then the last one is going to be toggle scoreboard. And I'm going to use the tab key. There we go. So this is the input mapping context. We can save this one and close it down. And now all we need to do is set up the events in our base character. So inside of our base character, the easiest thing to do is expand the event graph under here and then simply search for input. And all of the input events should appear over here. So we want to replace the old ones with the new enhanced inputs. So let's start with the movement and the looking ones. So I'm going to grab all 4 of those and go to a little bit of an empty space over here. So let's do the looking event first. So we're going to right click and search for the new event. So that's input action look. And you want to use the enhanced action event. So not the value, but the event. And then you will be presented with the new node over here. So for looking, we actually need our add controller pitch and yaw inputs. So we can simply grab these nodes from the old events and move them over here. So for the yaw and the pitch, we want to right click the action value and split the struct pin. So then we can simply plug in the X into the yaw. Yeah, and the Y into the pitch. And we need to hook both of these up to the triggered event. And that should be good to go. So that's all we need to do for looking around. Now let's do the movement. So let's look for our input action move. And again, select our action event. For this one, again, we need to split the action value. So right click it and split the struct pin. So we have Y and X. And then we need our add movement input node. So let's grab this one. We want to hook it up to the triggered event. And then we get the vectors a little bit different. So we're going to right click and first we're going to get the control rotation. And then you can right click the return value, split the struct pin. And then just right click in an empty spot and you want to get right vector. And simply select the top one that doesn't point to a component. So this starts with a rotator, and again you can split the struct pin over here and then only connect the roll and the yaw. And the return value is going to be the world direction and the scale value is going to be the X value. So X is for the right vector, and then you want to get the control rotation, add movement input and copy those nodes. Paste them back here, simply hook them up to the other one. And this time you don't want to get the right vector, but we're going to get the forward vector. So again, select the top one that needs a rotator as an input. So we're going to split the struct pin. And for this one, only connect the yaw. And then simply plug in the world direction over here and grab the scale value from the Y from the input event. So that's movement and looking. So those are the quote unquote complicated ones. And we can get rid of the old events over here. So let's simply delete them. My editor is really slow, so I'm not sure. It might even just crashed right now. Oh, freaking really. Oh, it's back. Nice. So I'm not sure why it's so slow, but I'm gonna try and continue. And hopefully that works out. So on the left side, we can simply work our way down the list and replace all of the input action events. So let's just start with the top one, double click it. And over here, we want to grab the new nodes. So we're going to look for our input action ADS. Now there is one thing you need to keep in mind. If you use the triggered pin over here, this will fire every tick for as long as you have the button pressed. And the old input events simply had one firing moment when you press the button and one when you release the button. So if you want to fire it once when you press the button, you need the started pin. And if you want to fire every tick when you hold the button down, you need the triggered pin. And then you have completed, and that's kind of the same as the released one. So for our ADS, we're gonna move our pressed pin to the started and then the released pin to completed. And then we can get rid of the old event. Damn, it's really slow. Okay, so that's good to go. And then simply work our way down the list. So fire weapon, look for the new event. Fire weapon input action. And again, we're gonna use the started and the completed pins over here. And delete the old event. Why does that take so long? Okay. And the next one, pause game. So again, look for the input action enhanced one and simply move over the pins. So for pressed, we're going to use started. So I'm going to delete the nodes a little bit later because it just takes a few seconds to delete one node. So input action reload. And for this one, again, move it to the started pin over here. Then we have dashing. So all of these are pretty much the same. So you can simply work your way down the list and connect them up to the started and or completed pin. Switching weapon. Oh, really? There we go. So I might just have to restart the editor. I'm not sure why it's so slow, but okay. Interact. Input action interact. No. Oh, come on. Yeah, thank you. So I'm gonna pause the video and restart the editor real quick. Okay, so I'm back. Hopefully it's responding a bit better right now. So let's look for our input action interact. And let's replace this one. Yeah, that's better. There we go. Okay, so we had this expanded and we had our input events over here. So this was interact. And I already deleted that one. So switch weapon, we did that. Toggle scoreboard. Let's do this one. Input action and toggle the scoreboard. So again, use the started and the completed pin. And I just deleted it, so that's a bit annoying. Switch shoulder, that's the next one. Input action, switch shoulder. And for the pressed one, we're going to use our started pin. So then we have jumping, input action jump. And for this one, so if we look at a third-person project, they actually hook up the jump pin to triggered, and then this one to completed. So apparently for jumping, it doesn't matter if this fires every frame. So if you set it up like this, it's the same as the default third-person project, and that's supposed to be how it works. So that was jumping. Then we have crouching, input action crouch, and move over the pins. Okay, or not. Melee. So that only has the started one. And then grenade throwing. Input action throw grenade. There we go. So that should be pretty much all. And then on the left side, you can see if you have any old events left and you can just get rid of them. There we go. And then compile and save this. So for completion's sake, we could go into the project settings right now. And I don't know why it opens in such a small window. So there we go. And if we go to the inputs, we can just get rid of all of these. So get rid of the action mappings and the axis mappings. And close it down. What the... Oh, I docked it in the actual... Okay. So that was my bad. I need to reopen the project. So all that's left to do is add the mapping context to our player controller. So let's open the shooter player controller. And in here you want to look for the event begin play. And we only want to add it for the local controller. So make sure that we add it behind the first branch. So we're checking if we are a local player controller. And then we're going to right click and we're going to look for the enhanced subsystem. So get enhanced input local player subsystem. So that little node. And from here you can drag off and you can add a mapping context. So select this one, add mapping context. So we're going to hook this up to the through pin, plug this one back in and simply select our mapping input in here. Compile this, save it, and now we should be good to go. So let's launch a quick solo game. And it's actually compiling all kinds of shaders, but that doesn't really matter. So there we have it. We have the project working. And we have our movement, jumping, looking around, firing, ADS. So everything is working. So that's done, and we have our project updated to 5.1. So I'm getting the errors, but those are the usual simulate physics errors, so nothing to do with actual errors in the code. So we're good to go, and I actually verified this works when packaging a game as well, so you can simply package this and that should work as well. Thanks for watching everybody, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider leaving a like and I'll be back soon for more. Talk to you later guys, bye.